Hey everybody, back again with us is Paul Craig Roberts to talk about another important topic, the so-called summit between Trump and Putin in Alaska this Friday. Paul, there's high hopes among some people about this, but you say if you really examine the elements going into this, it's doomed to fail. What's your position?
Well, the way I see it, Larry, it's highly suspicious, this meeting, because there's no reality about it. There's been no proper preparation. It makes no sense for Putin or Trump to go into such a highly publicized meeting with all of these announcements beforehand of the amazing success that's about to happen, especially this is unlikely when Trump doesn't even know what Putin's position is.
Yeah, in fact, Trump has said that it'll involve some land swaps. Zelensky says there's not going to be any swapping of land. And as you said in your post recently, Putin was trying to get back those Russian ethnic areas that were being attacked by Ukraine. So he's not about to give that up again. So again, it seems like non-starters all over.
Well, that's the danger. Um, I don't know why Putin agreed because he's really in a highly pressured situation that's not in his or Russia's interest. Um, in Trump's latest press conference, he again said the solution is a land swap.
Yeah.
Well, this shows he doesn't understand what Putin's after. Putin's not looking to end the war. He's been clear about this from the beginning. He's looking to end the hostility the West has been presenting to Russia for years and years now, since the declaration of the Wolfowitz Doctrine.
Which is review.
Um, it's 30 years old, and it's the doctrine by Paul Wolfowitz, the Undersecretary of Defense, who said that the principal goal of American foreign policy is to prevent the rise of any country, especially Russia, that could serve as a constraint on American unilateralism. And it's this doctrine which led to the American overthrow of the Ukrainian government, the installation of the Russophobic puppet to begin persecution of the Russian residents in Ukraine, which eventually led to the intervention of Putin. So the whole purpose of the Ukrainian conflict, which was intentionally started by Washington, was put pressure on Russia and to try to destabilize the government, to present Russia as an aggressor, threatening to all of Europe, to get Europe all wound up in preparation for war with Russia, to expand NATO, as has happened with the joining of Finland and Sweden, formerly two relatively neutral countries. So the whole Ukrainian conflict was orchestrated in order to increase the pressures on Russia and in hopes of destabilizing it. So now all of a sudden, we're going to end that.
Yeah, and also, as you said, Trump has recently talked about selling all this military equipment to Europe so that they could use it in the Ukrainian war. So he's making aggressive moves, not drawing back at all. But my question would be this, Paul. Since he's a deal maker, he likes to throw something out and then come to a compromise. Could this all be a show to say, oh, okay, we won't do this, we won't do that if you do that? So he'll come to a deal in the end, or you think he's just being unrealistic and still uninformed about the real issues behind all this?
let me go about it this way. Um, there, there are two powerful obstacles to an agreement, and neither has been addressed by either side. One is this doctrine of American hegemony. If you have a doctrine of hegemony, then you're not going to make any sort of concessions that improve the situation for your opponent. That's out. No one's addressed. Trump has not repudiated the doctrine of hegemony, neither has the Secretary of State. So the doctrine is still there. So if the whole purpose is to prevent the rise of a country that can be a block to American unilateralism, you can't expect the United States to do anything that's going to be to the benefit of Russia. Secondly, we have the military security complex. The military security complex, it's huge budget, it's enormous power, the covert operations. All of this depends on enemies. If you don't have enemies, you don't have the need for the massive budget, for the unaccountable covert operations of assassinating people, overthrowing governments. So these are two powerful interests, and neither has been addressed, and neither is served by some sort of resolution of a conflict that Washington started for the purpose of weakening Russia. So what has Russia done to change Washington's mind? Nothing. So when you're faced with these kinds of obstacles, and they have not been discussed in advance of this meeting, no one has even recognized them. And we have recently, as you pointed out, Trump bragging about how he had gotten the commitment from the European Union to purchase hundreds of billions of dollars of Americans' weapons that the Europeans will funnel into the war in Ukraine. What happens to that deal if all of a sudden the war goes away?
Yeah.
Is the military security complex going to be happy that all this profit has disappeared? Did Trump promise them instead a war with Iran, China, or both? So we're talking about an agreement that cuts across powerful interests
Yeah.
that have not been removed.
Yeah, and Paul, what should be pointed out is that Trump has this image among his loyal following that he's his own guy. He calls the shots. He doesn't let anybody influence him wrongly. But you're saying what we just mentioned. These are powerful forces that surround any president, and even Trump can't shrug them off.
That's right. The neoconservatives have not been repudiated, and neither has their doctrine. Now, with that background, let's come and look at this meeting. No prep work has been done. One day, Trump says, "I don't even want to meet with Putin. It's pointless." The next day, "I want a meeting this week."
Right.
What happened? Allegedly, Witkoff, Trump's negotiator, told Putin something that Putin thought was acceptable. Well, what? We don't know. No one has said what it is. But let's look at it. Normally, before two high-profile leaders on such a high-profile issue, before they go to a meeting, Everything is already worked out. Both sides know what the agreement is. Both have accepted it, and the only part of the meeting is to announce it. They're going into a meeting which there's no agreement. Neither side knows what the agreement is because there's not an agreement. Trump thinks the agreement is going to be based on a land swap, despite the fact that the Russians said no, the agreement has to recognize that all of the land that is now officially part of Russia is Russian. This has to be recognized by Ukraine, the United States, Europe. That's over and done with. We want to address the root causes of the conflict.
Which people still don't know. The media never really mentions it. So let's
That's right. And the root causes are Russia's intense feeling of insecurity. Why is Russia insecure? Because we've got missile bases all over their borders. It's like the Cuban Missile Crisis in reverse, but not just one missile base, a large number of them. We have the bases in Poland and Romania, all over Western Europe, and now Trump has recently reinstalled the intermediate range nuclear missiles that Reagan took out of Europe. Trump has put them back. There are hundreds of American nuclear bombs all over the American air bases in Europe. Trump has just sent two more nuclear armed submarines closer to Russia. And this creates a huge feeling of insecurity on the part of the Russians. They've got no warning time.
yeah.
And Putin wants this addressed. They've been trying to get this addressed for years. Years. They've been trying to get this addressed. Most recently was December of 2021 through February of 2022, just prior to the Russian incursion into Donbass. They pleaded with Blinken, the Secretary of State, with Obama, with Biden. They pleaded with the EU. They pleaded with NATO. Let's have a mutual security agreement. And they got the cold shoulder. And that's what forced the Russian intervention in Donbass, because the large American trained and equipped Ukrainian army was about to invade the two independent republics and subdue them, slaughter them. And of course, they're all Russians.
Yeah. And plus they were threatening at the same time to join NATO. Now,
Yeah,
I'm wondering if Trump really is as sophisticated as many believe about foreign relations, because, is he taking the wrongful approach that peace through strength? Come on hard so the other guy backs off and then you back off and you come to an agreement. I mean, is that his strategy? It seems like that's what he's aiming at.
I don't know if there is a strategy.
Yeah, the opposite.
Let me address this, I
Uh,
think, in a different way. The pressures on Putin and on Trump of this meeting are extreme, but nothing's been worked out in advance. Let me just read you some of the statements, uh, particularly from the Russian side. They're the most amazing beliefs in the success of this, of a meeting for which there's no preparation. Neither side knows what the agreement is. All right, here is um, Here is the Gilbert Doctorow. Gilbert Doctorow is reporting now on the most recent Russian state television news reports. And he says, quote, watching Russian state television news yesterday, that's yesterday, left me in no doubt that the Kremlin is putting out high expectations for the outcome of the Alaska summit to their population. Russian journalists and expert panelists are euphoric. The Rosalia U.S. Bureau Chief Valentin Bogdanov is now in Anchorage reporting on preparations to receive the Russian delegation, interviewing locals on the city streets who speak of their friendship with Russians, interviewing clerics in the local Russian Orthodox Church. They're singing songs in Slavic and so on and so on. Why would the Kremlin create such expectations of success when nobody knows what the agreement is? And when Trump has repeatedly said that a land swap is the basis for this upcoming summit, which doesn't just clash with Zelensky's refusal, it also clashes with the Russian proposal. Now, we have a number. Let me read some more of these statements. Hold it just a second while I call them up. Okay. Here's what Putin's negotiator, Kirill Dmitriev, said. That this is, quote, a historic meeting in which dialogue will prevail. How does he know? Another Russian dreamer proclaimed that, quote, Putin and Trump may reconfigure the world order. Another Russian engaged in this romantic theorizing. The commentator declared that Alaska was chosen for the historic meeting because it so clearly embodies the spirit of neighborliness, that mutually beneficial cooperation lost during the Cold War. So you see all of this sort of euphoric expectations. Now let's ask ourselves, who is this Dmitriev that is Putin's principal negotiator in the Ukrainian matter? All right. If we look at this man, is he a Russian or is he an American? Nominally, he's a Russian. But in fact, he's a graduate of Stanford University and Harvard Business School. These are entrance ramps into the American establishment. Dmitriev began his career at Goldman Sachs, a member of the establishment. He's a young global leader of the World Economic Forum. His long list of honors and directorships of Russian companies is provided by the World Economic Forum. Currently, he is chief of the Russian Direct Investment Fund, and he's also Putin's special envoy on international economic and investment cooperation. Now, could Putin have chosen a more conflicted person to negotiate with Washington?
Why would he choose him?
That's the question. My view is that not just all over Europe and the United States, but also in Russia, the largest percentage of the international class, or let's put it this way, the largest percentage of the intellectual class is globalist, not nationalist.
Right.
They're globalists. If you're a globalist, defense of national interest is not your main motive. In fact, it's not a motive at all. And so we see that the foreign policy of the United States, of Russia, of the EU, uh, of NATO, it's in the hands of people who are not nationalists. That is, they're globalists. Well, if you're not, how does a country have national defense if its intellectual class isn't nationalist?
Right.
And I think that's the problem that Putin has.
And these are spread throughout Russia, right? I mean, they've got a grip on the Russian government, what they're trying to integrate with Western economies. So it's a powerful force, contrary to what Putin is trying to do, preserve Russian nationalism.
Well, if that is what he's trying to do, yeah, we don't know. You see, now let me get on now to the most important part of this. Here we have amazing expectations created by the Russians themselves when they have no idea what the agreement is. And when Trump is saying it's a land swap. Well, this puts tremendous pressure on Putin to produce a peace agreement. That puts the ball in the hands of Trump. There's far more pressure. There is some pressure on Trump to produce a peace agreement because of all his boast. When I'm president, I'll solve this in 24 hours. Well, it's not solved. Um, um, some of his supporters still want peace. They don't want war. Some of the EU want peace. They don't want war. So there is some pressure on Trump. But the way this is set up, most of it is on Putin. All these expectations created by the Russians. So how is he going to go? And Trump says, okay, you've got to give back this, that, and the other area, and and we can and we'll make Zelensky let you keep Crimea and Donbass, but the rest you got to give back, or whatever he wants to say. And if Putin says no, well, then Putin just blocked the peace.
It sounds like you're concluding that Putin is being set up
He
by
set
this
he set himself up by accepting. This is the reason. This is the reason. See, there's never been a summit held like this with no prep work.
Yeah,
Now, the prep work is always done so that the people who go there are not subjecting themselves to enormous pressure to capitulate.
right, right.
See? Well, but that's the position Putin's in.
It's like there's ground rules ahead of time, set ahead,
They're
usually in preparation.
not just ground rules, but they know what the deal is.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's no deal. Or if there is a deal, Putin has agreed to give up land. Now, how is that going to play with the Russian armed forces, with the Russian nationalists?
Unless they claim, as a compromise, that he won't attack Kiev, which he was never really intending to do anyway. So maybe that'll be his concession and that'll work.
Yes, but how does this settle the root? How does this solve the root cause of
Yeah.
the conflict? The root cause of the conflict is not entering into it. So why is Putin going?
Yeah, again, you're saying that even after this deal, if there is one, Russia's still going to be as insecure as it was before, threatened by the West. So therefore, what good is it?
That's right.
Yeah.
What's the point?
Paul, it also strikes me time and time again, and people may forget this, but before we staged that coup in Russia, thanks to the neocons in the State Department, Victoria Nuland among the leaders of it, uh, Ukraine was stable. There's no problem. Now all of a sudden, big crisis. Russia is trying to invade all of Ukraine, and then Europe is next. Blah 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 blah. I mean, none of that was in play before we staged the coup to set all this up.
Well, that's right. That's the reason we did it, was to put pressure on Russia,
Yeah.
to try to destabilize Russia, to get Russia further demonized for the EU, for the European governments to expand NATO membership, which we have done. This crisis has brought two more countries that were formerly neutral, Finland on Russia's border and Sweden
And again, getting back
into NATO, which means more American missile bases.
And getting back to the comparison with the Cuban Missile Crisis, as you say, Khrushchev just is in one location 90 miles off our shore, and that almost erupted into a nuclear war with the then Soviet Union. So now, as you say, the shoe is on the other foot, but it doesn't count. Russia should just accept this, whereas we were not accepting nuclear missiles in Cuba.
Yeah, and the missile bases on Russia's borders, they start up near the Arctic.
Yeah,
The Finland, the Baltics, they run all the way through Western Europe, deep into Eastern Europe, uh, Central Europe, Southern Europe. And now we are also in the South Caucasus,
yeah,
orchestrating a deal to take over the Zangezur corridor that runs along Iran's northern border with Armenia and Azerbaijan, two former provinces of the Soviet Union. So we are now there. According to some reports, we have negotiated a 99-year lease. Well, what this does, it puts us right in the middle of Russia's sphere of influence. It completes the encirclement of Iran because we're now right on their northern border, right on their border. And we're in there fomenting all kinds of difficulties. And it also knocks out a leg of the new Chinese Silk Road. So if we want peace with Russia, why are we doing that?
yeah.
This is real mischief. How
Well,
can the Russians be blind to this?
so Paul, in closing, how do you expect this to turn out Friday?
I don't see how it can turn out in any positive way. Um, if Trump agrees to a mutual security agreement and to getting NATO off of Russia's borders, he won't be permitted. The military security complex, the American foreign policy community, they'll just not allow it. It can't. He'll be out of office. He'll get impeached. Who knows what would happen to him?
Yeah, and like we've said, does Trump even understand these issues?
I don't see any semblance of it, and I don't see how Putin can, after fighting a war, we're well into the fourth year. The fourth year comes up in February.
Yeah,
So August, we're a quarter, almost just a little over a quarter of a year away from 4-year war, and he can now give back uh, victories that cost large numbers of Russian casualties. And what you see, whereas the Russian intellectual class is heavily westernized, this war has made the Russian population more nationalistic.
yeah.
So the split between the Russian people and the intellectuals is widened.
And Paul, once again, you've been saying all along that this could very well lead to a big nuclear war.
Well, um, if Trump is insistent, and uh, we don't know how Trump's going to behave, but increasingly it's dictatorial, isn't it? Do this or else. You He gave Putin 10 days, remember?
Yeah.
He's increasingly dictatorial. So if he comes in and he's hard-nosed with Putin, and Putin says no, he's going to blow up, isn't he? Like he blew up with Zelensky, like he's blown up with some European leaders. Um, this is why I say this whole meeting doesn't make any sense. All of these things should have been taken care of in advance. Somebody should have sat down and explained carefully to Trump what Putin's position is and ask him, sir, can you agree with this? If you can't, what part can you agree with? Any part of it can you agree with? What can we show the Russians we might come to terms on? Well, apparently this hasn't been done. Uh, why did Putin suddenly agree to put himself in such a spot? Putin is in a spot. If he is presented with unreasonable demands and rejects it, he's going to be demonized. He's the man who wrecked the chance for peace.
Right.
The American propaganda dominates. The Russian press has no reach. Uh, and moreover, the Russian press is probably in the hands of the westernized Russian intellectuals. So, why did Putin put himself in this situation? It's a very dangerous situation.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's the first time that I know of something this foolish happening.
Yeah.
You
We've said time and time again, the real causes of this conflict, as we've discussed, never mentioned in any of the media.
uh,
It's all one-sided. Russia's the aggressor. Putin wants to take over all of Europe. We could be next. Blah blah blah.
right. So how can Trump say we're removing NATO from Russia's borders?
Yeah,
He
yeah.
can't. There's no preparation for that. Um, um, how can he even say, there's been misunderstandings. We all need to kind of back off and begin working on a long-term solution to this problem. It's hard for him even to say that because everybody say, you're selling out the Ukrainians, you're selling out democracy, you've given in to Putin. Uh, the neocons will be all over Trump.
You've been
And
mentioning. You've been.
both of them are in a mess. Both of them are in a mess, but I think Putin's the one who's really set up. And the question is, who set him up? Did Dmitriev set him up? Did Witkoff set him up? Did the two scheme together to set him up? Uh, Both of these people are obviously globalists.
Yeah.
And, uh, and Putin really has that tendency himself. He's being nationalist just because he's the head of Russia and he can't surrender the country. you know, but he's not an aggressive nationalist. And once again, if peace was the intent of Washington, why suddenly are we taking over an area inside of what was the Soviet Union, establishing ourselves, creating difficulties for Russian influence, for the new Chinese Silk Road, and for Iran? Why? What is the United States doing in the South Caucasus, in Central Asia? There's no business to be there, except to cause trouble for Russia, China, and Iran. And so clearly we are still intent on causing trouble for Russia, China, and Iran. And I suspect that is what this Ukrainian peace conference is for, to worsen the relationships between Washington and Russia by creating all kinds of false expectations that can't be met and then will be blamed on Putin.
Well, we'll see.
That's my feeling. I hope I'm totally wrong. I'm prepared to eat crow if miracles happen.
Well, we'll soon see what happens, and we'll be talking about it. So, Paul, Craig Roberts, and for viewers out there that don't realize Paul's background, he was the Assistant Treasury Secretary under Reagan, knows government in and out, all the ins and outs of government, what really goes on behind the scenes. So, when you analyze these things, you bring a unique perspective to it. So, Paul, thanks once again for being with us.
Okay, Larry.